into today, including more on the Deshaun Watson saga. One ESPN writer says he's probably not going anywhere. We'll get into that as the NFL always seems to need quarterbacks. Out to the phones we go, though. We'll welcome in from the Clemson Insider, friend of the program, Mr. Will Vandervoort. Will, what's going on, buddy? How are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to the Deshaun Watson thing is turning into a Days of Our Lives type thing now, where it seems like everyone says, hey, they're in the mix to try to get to trade for him, but Houston's like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And Jalen Ramsey says, hey, I don't think he'll ever suit up for them again. If you listen to his last press conference, he sounded like, man, he was just done. What do you think about that, man? You think he's going to end up going somewhere, or do you think he's going to stay put in Houston?
I think he's going to end up going somewhere. Deshaun, just knowing Deshaun and covering him for 3 years at Clemson, you know, he's a guy that, first of all, if you're committed to doing the best you can to be successful, he's going to do everything he can to help you get there. And, you know, if he sees that you're not, then, you know, he doesn't want to be associated with people like that. He never has been. He's been a winner his entire life. And, you know, like I've said before, money's not an issue for Deshaun Watson. That's where a lot of people don't get it. They're like, well, if he doesn't play, he's not going to get this kind of money. And he doesn't care. He really doesn't. You know, his agent might care. People like that care about money might care. But Deshaun's never been fascinated on money. His goal as a kid growing up was to get in the NFL and play because he loves the game, and also because he wanted to get his mom a new house.
Yeah.
You know, and get her something nice. And so never was it about Deshaun, you know. And now Deshaun, does he take advantage of his riches and spoils? Absolutely. But it's not his ultimate goal. He loves playing the game of football, and he likes to play it at the highest level, and he wants to win and compete. And we've all seen what Houston's done in the last year. They're not showing anything where they want to compete. They're going the exact opposite with the moves they've made. And I think Watson he's steadfast on what he wants to do and that he wants out. And I think my best guess, and this is just strictly a guess, I think he's going to land in Miami when it's all said and done. Because I think Miami they're in position to where you add Deshaun Watson, all of a sudden they go from a playoff contender to a Super Bowl contender.
Can you imagine that division if Deshaun Watson goes there and you're having to deal with Watson in Miami? You've got Josh Allen up with Buffalo, and then whoever Bill Belichick puts out there. If you're the Jets, you're just saying, can we go to the CFL and play in the Canadian League? I'm serious, because having to match up with those guys in your division, man, that's going to be, I think that'll turn that division into into the toughest division in football. I really do.
Yeah, welcome to the AFC North, right? It's been that way for a long time.
Speaking of which, you know, Ben Roethlisberger signed his extension yesterday, and I wanted to ask you about that while we're talking about the pro stuff here. His release, I thought it's just dripped with sarcasm.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do whatever for the team. Just stop it.
Yeah, well, it's just I don't think it's more like a 1 year deal. It sounds like, from everything I'm reading out of Pittsburgh. Like he wants to come back for 1 year and see if they can win, get in a position to win a Super Bowl. I think that's kind of what he doesn't want to go out the way he did in that game against Cleveland. I think he wants to go out a better way with a little bit better taste in his mouth. And so we'll see. The interesting thing, it makes me say, okay, what do the Steelers need? Well, they need a center now with Pouncey, you know, retiring.
Right.
So they do need a center. So that makes that a need right there. And they need a running back because they've already decided they're not going to bring James Conner back. So what do the Steelers do? You know, and then they need that. Do you move up and go get one of those quarterbacks, like if he's sitting there around number 10 or 11,
right,
like they did with Devin Bush a few years ago when they needed an inside linebacker? Do they move up and make that kind of trade? It's going to be an interesting draft for the Steelers, because if you go get the kid out of North Dakota, who I know the Steelers really like and are kind of targeting, If he falls down there and he's sitting there around 10 or 11, I don't know if the Steelers make that move, because he's a guy that they can bring in. He's not NFL ready yet. You can bring him in, let him play under Ben Roethlisberger for a year, kind of do the Patrick Mahomes thing, and then let him, after a year sitting in the system, let him take over. So it's going to be an interesting draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they do know, without a doubt, because there was big talk within the Steelers that they weren't going to bring Ben back for one more year. And I think, they sat down with Ben and talked to him, and I know Art Rooney II and Kevin Colbert talked to him, and they kind of all agreed that this is probably going to be the last year, and they still think he can lead them to a championship. So that's why they went ahead and made this decision now. But they're starting to look to the future, because they know they got to have a quarterback.
All right, let's move away from the NFL for a moment. Let's talk some college basketball. We'll start, of course, obviously with the Clemson Tigers, as they go up to Syracuse and they lay an egg. There was a stat that the 10 for 30 from inside of 20 feet. That's not very good, sir. That's not very good at all.
Yeah, well, Syracuse, I had a feeling, and I know that the players and coaches won't use this as an excuse, but I'm a guy that was a shooter, and when I played basketball, and listen, sightline is everything. And when you go up to the Carrier Dome, I don't know if you've ever played in an arena that's not necessarily made for basketball. I have, and the sightlines are very weird, and it does mess with you when there's nobody there,
right? And
you don't have that backdrop. And being that Syracuse, when you let Clemson, and you played Syracuse all these years, and there's 17 to 18,000 people there every time you played them, you're used to that. There is some kind of sense. And then when you go play, and Kelly Gramlich, who played at Clemson, and she's on a radio show up here in Clemson and works for the ACC Network, she talked about it from the women's perspective, and she was a shooter at Clemson, and she said that she went up there the first time they played Syracuse, and this is a girl who was led like one of the top shooters in the ACC, and she set all kind of Clemson records of shooting. She said that she goes up to Syracuse and there's nobody in the stands, and she said she couldn't, it really messed her up as a shooter. And so, I think that had something to do with it, that there were no fans because of COVID, and that they're not a great shooting team to begin with, right? I mean, they're not. And so you take a team who's not a great shooting team, and you're playing against a team who specifically plays zone. If you're, it made sense to me. I know Clemson, again, is not going to use that as an excuse, but yeah, when you play Syracuse, you only have two choices to beat them. There's only two ways you can beat them, right? One is you make the three. Clemson, the first time they played them this year, they made the three. They made 10 3-pointers in that game. The second time the second way you beat them is you got to make those 15-foot mid-range jumpers, those elbow jumpers, right?
Right.
And if you got a guy that can do that, you're gonna have success. Clemson didn't do either. They couldn't hit the three. They couldn't hit the mid-range jumper. And when you can't do that against Syracuse in that zone, you got no chance to beat them. And that's what happened up there.
All right. Well, moving on from that, Clemson, if they want to have any shot at getting a top 4 seed in the tournament, they have to beat this Pitt team this weekend. That's 6-9 in conference play. And you thought that things would have, they lost their best player at one point this season. You thought that things would have fallen off the rail, but they have won a game here. Just their last game they were out, they were 1. And now they're coming out down to Little John. It's, this is a really, really big game for Clemson, right?
Oh, no doubt. Now, the thing that's interesting is I don't know if Clemson's going to be able to get that number 4 seed, because first of all, Virginia Tech is not going to play. I think they're pretty much going to be set in the top 4. Louisville would have to lose, and they can, but I don't know if Clemson can jump Louisville and Georgia Tech. And then the keeper of all of it is Georgia Tech plays at Wake Forest tonight, and let's just be honest, Georgia Tech isn't losing to Wake Forest. So I think Clemson's pretty much set there as the number 6 seed, and I think you can almost kind of take that to the bank. But they need to win the game because you want to have some momentum going into the ACC tournament, because that would give them 6 wins in their last 7 to close out the year. Definitely a good way to finish the year. So, but it's going to be a tough game because Pitt did lose 2 of their top 3 scorers to the transfer portal. But the bad news is they bring back the ACC's second leading scorer. The guy, the guy who is the leading scorer on the team is the ACC's second leading scorer, and he's the ACC's top rebounder, and is probably, if I had to bet, would be even though he's playing on a team that's just 500, I would say he's probably one of the guys being considered for ACC Player of the Year. So definitely going to be a tough challenge for him because they got a guy who could score and can do things. And so we'll see how Clemson tries to just let somebody else on that Pitt team beat them other than him. So definitely a tough game for Clemson nonetheless. But it's in Littlejohn, and Clemson's played very well at Littlejohn this year.
All right, and the Tiger baseball team opens up conference play with Notre Dame. And I remember the guy who's going tonight, Sheenhan, I believe his name is, for Notre Dame. He is he's a pretty tough out there as the number one starter there for the Irish.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Notre Dame beat Clemson last year 2 out of 3.
Right.
And took the series, and I think it started with the Friday night win. So they're not easy. Now the thing about playing at Notre Dame as opposed to playing at Clemson is anybody who's played there knows it's an artificial surface, and it's got some crazy bounces on the infield and the way the ball, when you're playing on that artificial turf for baseball, I don't know if you've ever watched a game played on one.
It shouldn't be happening at all.
It should not
be played for baseball ever.
I understand why they do it, because it gives them a chance to have some home games, during these cold months, instead of having to be down south the entire time. And then they're trying to keep they don't have to worry about grass and all that stuff. I get it. I understand the cost effectiveness of it and all that, but it has no business being played. Duke also has one. I think Wake Forest has one, and it's just, Louisville has one, I believe. It's just like not real baseball, right?
It's trash. I mean, that's the only way I can think. I think they said it in Bull Durham. Artificial turf should be outlawed. And that's the absolute truth. I mean, baseball is meant to be played on the grass. And
it's not just artificial turf, right? It's also the clay is fake. It's not real clay.
It's the fakest thing ever, man.
It's fake all the way around. And now, does it make for good base running? Absolutely. But it doesn't make for good ball placement and trying to find the ball and get the ball and the speed of the baseball. I know there was a couple of times like last year where Notre Dame got hits because of just the way the ball reacted on the field, right?
Right.
So on the turf. So that cost Clemson a couple times in those 3 games. And, they don't have to worry about that this year. It's at Doug Kingsmore Stadium where it's natural grass, natural clay, and all that stuff. And I think that'll help Clemson. And I think, I think you saw, even though Clemson lost the series to South Carolina, they started hitting the ball really good in game 2 against South Carolina. And I think that really did help their confidence. And we know they got pretty good pitching and they can get out of some things. So we'll see. Davis Sharp's kind of got to set the tone tonight.
Right.
If he can go in there and look like a Friday night guy, then that's what Clemson needs. But I really like what they have in Olenchuk. The way he looked in Columbia was impressive. Going down there as a true freshman, pitching in Columbia where he grew up as a Gamecock fan, with his family there and all that pressure on him. And man, he was lights out for 4 1/3 inning. And, I understand why Monty took him out, but man, he pitched a well of a ball game. That young man might be something pretty special here in the next year or 2.
Speaking of which, for the East Tennessee State game, Clemson started 6 freshmen. And I like that on one front because you've got guys that are going to come back eventually. Kier Meredith got to DH the other night. He's going to eventually work his way back into the lineup. And then, of course, you've got Hackenberg and Hall. Those guys should be in the mix here before too long, right?
Yeah, Hackenberg's getting pretty close. We don't know definitely yet on Hall, but Hackenberg is getting pretty close. And they need him to come back because French, who's played well, he's got some kind of lower leg injury. Well, not lower leg. We think it could be a hamstring or something of that nature. It's something wrong with his leg, and he's having a hard time. He's really playing through a lot of pain right now. And he's the only catcher because Engel, the other backup catcher, who also is an outfielder, he's been out too. So they're hoping to get Engel back this week. Maybe in the next week or 2. They're going to get the other guy back, and then they'll be where they need to be. But right now, they're just one catcher, and French is doing everything he could. So if Hackenberg comes back here in the next week or 2, that'd be a big lift for them. But they at least know what they got in this French kid who has come out and played well against South Carolina, played well the other day, even against this. I mean, he got a hit and he could barely walk. I mean, that tells you something. So you give the kid credit for sticking to it and doing what he needs to do. But, they got a chance to be pretty good with these young players. I think by the end of the year, you might see this pay off for Monty, that these young players have gotten a lot of experience early on.
Right, and games against East Tennessee State and these midweek games, getting those guys out there. And, I don't want to compare them to the Vanderbilt team from a couple years ago that took the Tigers to the woodshed, but that's kind of what happened with that Vanderbilt team. They had to play all of these guys. There was a lot of injuries and stuff like that, and then everything finally came to a point where they ended up as the 2 seed, and they just had a ton of talent and went into Doug Kingsmore and just started bashing people and rode that for a bit. So I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but when you have that much talent there and then you're playing all these young guys down the road, that's going to make a big, big difference.
Yeah, I think it can be, and I think it will be for Clemson as they get further down the road, as you said. And I think the number one thing for Clemson right now, I like what they have in the lineup. I like the position players they have and the competition they have. But right now they're still in search of that number 3 pitcher. They still don't know who that's going to be. I think they were hoping it would be either Matt Clark. But Matt just went out last week in South Carolina and just, he got shelled. Let's just call it what it is. He got shelled last week. And so I think that kind of was a setback for Clemson. So we'll see what they do this week. Do they go back to the freshman and see, and Caden Grice and go back that way and see. We'll see. He obviously had a heck of a game at the plate the other day where he just one home run. He hit 2 home runs, but one was just like such a bomb. I mean, it was unbelievable. Yeah. It was a moonshot. Absolutely. Yeah. So, we'll see if they go to him again on the mound this week, and see if he can be their third guy. But right now that seems to be the main concern for Clemson is can they find that number 3 pitcher? They feel good about the 2 guys that go on Friday and Saturday, but they're really concerned about what they have. And, maybe it's Askew when he comes back. I don't know. But right now they're just really searching for a third pitcher.
All right. I got a couple Clemson football questions for you. This broke earlier where President Caslen talked about they expect to have full capacity at Death Valley. That's obviously good news. But the one thing I wanted to ask you about, though, was Tony Elliott coming out this week. How close do you think he was to taking that Tennessee job? I mean, did he really think about it? Do you think it was in his heart to at least, think about leaving Clemson, or do you think he's ready to try to go somewhere else?
No, he put some serious thought into it. There's no doubt about that. We know that, and he kind of alluded to that a little bit when he spoke with us this past week. But the main reason why he didn't go was he just felt like it wasn't the right place or time for his family. And he said when he leaves to take a job, he wants to go to a place where he's going for the long haul. He wants to take a job where he's going to be a fixture in the community and his kids are going to go to school there and be raised there. He says he's not going to be jumping around. So he doesn't want to take a job where he's in 3 or 4 years going to leave and go somewhere else. Or, maybe he didn't feel comfortable that, they'll give him the time that he needs. And let's be honest, it ain't like Tennessee's giving anybody any time up there. It would be the time he needs to build a program the right way. So those are going to be some important elements for Tony as he goes into these to this part of his career. I do think he's ready to take that move. It's just going to have to be the right fit for him in a lot of different areas for him to leave Clemson, because right now, he knows at Clemson, the one thing he has is security. He knows he's a part of this community. He's got a head coach who's a part of this community. He's locked in at Clemson for the long haul. And I think, that's important to him and his family. And so it's going to take a very special job for Tony Elliott to want to leave Clemson and make sure all those things that are important to him and his family are there.
Will Vandervoort from the Clemson Insider joins us here on the Rundown this afternoon. You got anything that's going on in spring practice you want to tell us about? Anything you're hearing about position races, anything at all?
Yeah, I think the position race to watch is obviously at center, in my opinion. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about running back and Justin Ross and all that stuff. But I think the center position is the key thing. We got Hunter Rayburn. They've really singled him out now as a guy who could potentially win that job. You got the 5-star number one center in the country and Ryan Linthicum on campus looking to win that job himself. But, Clemson kind of wants to have more of an experienced guy there at the moment. So that's going to be a situation where if Rayburn is the guy, they can say, okay, we got somebody we think can be the starter. That's going to allow them to kind of ease Linthicum in, and that will help that competition. It'll help Linthicum, and it's going to overall help that position. So if I'm watching one position this spring, I'm watching that center position because for obvious reasons, it's extremely important. And if you don't believe it is, ask Florida State and Jimbo Fisher and those guys, because that's when their program started going downhill, when they could not get a good center on that offensive line, and they started having some major issues.
Will Vandervoort from the Clemson Insider joins us today. And, of course, folks can find your stuff at theclemsoninsider.com. They can follow you on Twitter at SteelerWill. And your book is all over the place too, right?
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. So they can go to Amazon.com or stores in Clemson and Columbia and all that too.
Yeah, man. It's a cool book, man, to read about basically the history of Clemson football. So some good stuff there. Will, I appreciate you taking some time out for us today, man, talking a little bit about everything that's going on there with the program in the upstate.
Well, I appreciate you having me, man. Always good to come and talk Clemson and talk Clemson football and stuff with you guys. So anytime you need me, just give me a holler, Rob.
Appreciate it, Will. Thanks so much, man. All right, Will Vandervoort from the Clemson Insider joining us there. Clemson, of course, squares off tonight with they play Notre Dame. And South Carolina starts a series with Mercer. And it's kind of weird the way the schedules are set up where one team goes into conference play. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, but Gamecocks get into conference play next week. And the SEC is just cutthroat this year, man. You got so many teams that are ranked. It's like every, we kind of talk about, hey, we want this in football where you've got, really good matchups pretty much every weekend. Even the matchups where the teams aren't ranked in the SEC are going to be just some stellar stuff as far as college baseball goes. So we'll talk about that in a moment we get back. More of the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 in just a moment. Well, that shows how ignorant you are, Brock. I mean, you should know Clemson's got a 38 game lead over South Carolina in the series. If you win 13 more series, you win 38 straight? That's like 13 seasons in a row. Then you can lead the series. There you go, Brock. Glad that I can educate you on this afternoon, sir. I mean, that's what I'm here for. Brock's going to hit me in the face one day. It's going to happen. Well, learn something. You guys ready for the weekend over there? Ready to get it started?
My husband is from Guatemala. I'll apply what I've learned in Babel to a real life situation. The app is so easy and it's so practical. It helps you learn things that you will actually.
Yeah, but you would think that the team from South Carolina would have the advantage there and not be 38 games behind. I mean, Clemson can't win in Omaha. You think South Carolina could dominate them, but apparently not. 38 game lead, man. I mean, it's the way that it is. Now, unless you're telling me then it doesn't, the rivalry doesn't matter in baseball, then we can take it out of it. That's fine. And let's be honest about this too. You Gamecock fans would trade all of that to own the rivalry in football. You would. So just let's not pass lies today on a Friday. You give up all of the baseball national trophies and all of that. If you could look Clemson fans in the eye and be like, you know what? We dominate you in football like you dominate us. You do that. You know you would. Welcome back to the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. As I was saying, the baseball team for South Carolina, they get set for their matchup 4:00 today as they welcome in Mercer. And the Gamecocks perfect on the season. And Mercer, I haven't the little bit that I've done on Mercer, they're not exactly, it should be smooth pickings for the Gamecocks along the way here, as Mercer's going to start Tommy Green tonight. He's 0-1 with a 10.8 ERA. That's not very good. That's not very good at all. The Gamecocks, of course, are starting Thomas Farr. Tomorrow, Brandon Jordan gets the start for the Gamecocks against Taylor Lobus. And the Sunday matchup, Julian Bosnick against Jackson Kelly. The Bears were swept by Southern Illinois in Macon this past weekend. So they come in on a losing streak there. So I don't think the Gamecocks are going to have much of a problem there. And I wonder with the Gamecocks, if anybody is going to throw to a couple of guys on that team. Eister, of course, was big last week. And are they going to throw to Clark? If you're a team that you're an SEC play and you've seen how much damage he could do, why would you throw to him at all? That's kind of where I'm at on that. I'm not saying he deserves the Barry Bonds treatment yet, but he can do a lot of damage with the bat. So I don't know. I wouldn't throw to him. If you're a Mercer coach and you're listening to the show, why wouldn't they listen to the show? But if you're listening to the show today, hey, don't throw to him. That's not a very good move. He can hit the ball very, very far. So let's not throw the ball to him at all. There you go with that. Brandon reminds me of a line. They play Texas next weekend. And he's right. SEC play starts after that. So, yeah. But the first week of SEC play, in addition to the Gamecocks playing at what was normally a perennial power there in Texas, is now, they're not exactly the biggest power team ever, but the SEC play next weekend is going to be interesting in that when you look at the games that start on March 12th, a week from today, your SEC games include, actually everybody's out of conference next week. It's the week after that I'm thinking. You do have Vanderbilt playing Oklahoma State. That should be pretty good. Number 2 versus a 15 matchup. And I'm thinking the first week of the season, though, there was just a lot of really good matchups. Georgia and Tennessee, Alabama and Arkansas. Arkansas is ranked number 1 in the country, but Alabama is probably going to host. Wouldn't be that far-fetched to be a regional host. South Carolina opens up with Vanderbilt, a 2 versus 14 series. And Mississippi State plays at number 11 LSU. Auburn and Ole Miss, that's going to be an interesting series. Just very competitive in the SEC this year. And, preseason rankings don't mean much, but they're going to throw some, they're going to end up just beating each other senseless. Wouldn't surprise me, though, if we had, 7 or 8 regional hosts from the SEC. That may happen. May happen. I mean, it really, really may happen. All right, if you want to talk baseball today, we can get into that at 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to call if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown. I want to talk a little bit more about some quarterback stuff from around the NFL. We're getting to a point now where we're getting close to the draft. And one quarterback move was made today that it makes you think, things are starting to tumble just a little bit. So we'll get into that momentarily. Also joining me in studio today is Mr. Savage College Football. What's up, brother? How are you?
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you coming in today. You come in on Fridays. We'll have some college football notes from him later on and get his thoughts on the quarterback carousel that's going around the NFL right now. And we'll get into a couple of little things today that have kind of caught my eye here on the Rundown. Don't forget, Lawton Swan is on this afternoon from 4 to 6 o'clock with Clemson Sports Talk. He is the czar of Clemson Sports. You can also download the podcast from our show. It's at foxsportsradio1400.com or anywhere you get your favorite podcast. So Apple, Spreaker, whatever, Stitcher. Some people listen on Stitcher, I've heard. Wherever you want to go, you can get it there. You can also watch the video on the Fox Sports Radio Facebook page. Go and check that out as well. More of the rundown when we come back. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. I don't know. Sure. Do you have anything that you posted that you like?
Situation. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah, we could talk about Les Miles. Yeah, we can get into all that.
This was a very dumb decision, in my opinion. So Connecticut just gave their head coach an extension, and he's gone 6-30 in the last 3 seasons.
Who's that?
Randy Edsall.
Randy Edsall? Yeah, that's kind of funny. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Okay.
You could be a failure and just keep getting jobs. That's kind of the way it looks if you're at certain schools.
And our certified technician to get the job done right.
I kind of like. I didn't catch that story. Look at me. Look at me.
They posted that today, so
Yeah,
it was
not bad.
kind of new. I mean, I wouldn't normally like talk about that on the show, but I mean, if you have that bad of a record and you get re-signed,
Right. Yeah. That's kind of funny. I'm going to talk about this too. The coach's hot seat for next season. I've got my list for that. We can talk about that when we come back.
all right.
The NFL will have its first black woman official next season. Aya Chaka was added to the league's roster of game officials today. I'm Scott Davidson.
Download the DraftKings app and use code SPORTS to get a free shot at millions of dollars up for grabs this week. With your
Hey, you guys rock over there on the chat room. I appreciate you guys, man. TD. What a great line, TD. That's great, brother.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeart Radio app. Mr. Savage College Football joins us in studio. What's up, my friend?
How are you today?
I'm doing great. You mentioned that Coach Edsall at Connecticut got a contract extension. This guy has been a problem. I mean, Connecticut is terrible, and he keeps getting a job. How is that? I need to get one of these jobs where I can be a failure over and over and over again, but keep getting $1 million extensions.
It's crazy because the best season that Randy Edsall has had with the Huskies so far was a 3-9 season.
Mm.
And they didn't play in 2020 due to COVID and all, but in 2019, his last season that he coached, they went 1-11 with a 3-point win over FCS team Wagner.
I don't even know where Wagner is. I should look up on that. He should. You would think he'd be on the hot seat this year, but not so much. Getting an extension. I was looking online earlier, and some coaches that may be on the hot seat coming up this year. And I'll get your opinion on whether you think they're going to stay or go. Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, he should have been fired 2 years ago, in my opinion. But he's number one on this one list that I found. You think Harbaugh's going to finish out the year and move on to somewhere else?
I think he could, but I do believe that he needs to be fired. I mean, he is not winning the big games that Michigan fans
Right.
are expecting them to win.
Got to beat Ohio State, man.
He
That's the way
hasn't
it is.
beaten Ohio State, and he's beaten Michigan State at home once.
That's not very good. Clay Helton at Southern Cal. Here's the thing with him. I think they were at a position last year where they could have won the Pac-12. Clay Helton's not a good coach. But they couldn't. Hey, we're playing for the division title. We're playing for the title.
I mean, they
Kinda mess.
went and they were looking like a good team, and then they went and laid an egg against Oregon, who looked like an average team throughout the regular season.
TD online with a comment that I guess I could read this. Les Miles needs to get together with Super Dan Mullen's wife. Woof. That's off the top rope savagery there. Of course, talking about Les Miles, and was apparently told don't talk to female students at LSU the other day, or from in 2013. We learned that from an investigation that LSU put out there. So yeah, Les Miles not looking like looking like a creepo right now. TD also says that Josh Heupel will be on the list by Halloween. I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. I think everybody's going to think, all right, Tennessee could go 0-12 this year, and I don't think anyone would care, simply because they know that they're going to get some sanctions of some sort, and it's going to hit them in the face, and nobody's expecting anything. I mean, it seems like every day we've got somebody else that's leaving the program or transferring out. The punter decided he'd rather punt at Memphis. That's the best story of the year. Let's get this straight. You can go and punt in the SEC, or you can go and punt at Memphis. No disrespect to Memphis, but I'd rather leave an SEC team and go punt for Memphis. That's how bad Tennessee is right now.
I mean, if we're being honest, if Memphis played Tennessee right now, I think
Right.
Memphis would win.
Of course they would. I'd go with 10. I'd take Memphis and I'd give up 10 points. I think Memphis would drill them right now. Seriously, just seriously. It's no joke on that. But I think that honestly, that's going to be the big thing with Tennessee. There's going to be a section of folks that are going to be like, whatever happens is going to happen. This year is a complete wash. It's a placebo, whatever it is you want to call it. That's basically what Tennessee is going to be. So I don't know if Heupel will be on the list, but next year they're going to expect him to have a season where they look somewhat competitive. And what I mean by that is winning 6 games. He could do a lot for himself this year if he could beat Vanderbilt and Kentucky and maybe South Carolina. South Carolina having, of course, the new head coach here. If he can win those 3 games, they might build a statue to him. I don't know. But Tennessee could go 0-12.
Vanderbilt versus
I don't know the rest of their conference games.
Vanderbilt
but
versus
non-conference games.
Tennessee this season will be who doesn't
finish in
last.
the bottom of the SEC East. So it's definitely that. I mean, Tennessee is an absolute gong show. I mean, it's a clown car, and they're just going to fall out of it every game. It's kind of the way that it's going to be. Some other coaches on the hot seat. Jeff Brom at Purdue. It's tough in the Big Ten sometimes, but he was liked by everybody. Scott Frost at Nebraska. Mike Leach at Mississippi State. I don't necessarily agree with that. He has 1 season there.
I don't agree with that either. And remember, he started out when he was at Washington State. He started out there in 2012 with a 3-9 record.
Right.
But he built up that program, and the air raid takes time. And I remember reading before the 2020 season, people were saying, don't expect Mike Leach to come out and compete for an SEC West title, because that's not going to happen.
Well, my lasting vision of that coach is his team is fighting at the end of the bowl game, and ESPN goes to a shot of him taking pictures in the stands with people. Oh, these people are down here fighting. It's my team's down there fighting. And then there's video of them. Did you see the video inside the locker room where they're talking about doing the play-by-play of where they kicked the poor guy in his head? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going on. And Mike Leach is like, let me get a selfie with these people.
Did you by chance hear the interview of Mike Leach after the fight?
It was not very good. I've got it somewhere. It's actually really sad.
The ESPN guy says, so what did you tell your players after the fight? And Mike Leach responds with, oh, don't do it anymore.
Yeah, don't fight anymore. There's some good coaching. We don't want you to fight anymore. That's kind of the way to go there. All that stuff that you were doing down there, don't do that. And don't put it on social media either. If you're going to do that, don't put it on social media so the outside world can see that we're idiots across the country.
Especially the
we
fact
don't need
that
that.
he took pride in it.
Yeah, I don't get all that. TD with another line. As long as Leach has a second-year starter, he will score points and fight. Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man. It's a long way from the Dan Mullen era down there when Mississippi State was pretty much respectable every year. So, but he's on that list here. And another couple coaches, Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech. I honestly think he's going to go somewhere else after this season. They're going to have to look somewhere else. I mean, he has just not been very effective up there. Dino Babers at Syracuse, who is a guy that it seems like he's always got that program where you expect them to be pretty good, and then injuries happen, and they just don't have it. And I don't think anybody can win there, to be honest. A couple other names, Dana Holgerson, who has the skullet. I'm behind the guy with the skullet. Why not? If you're man enough to have a skullet and then wear a women's visor, you've kind of got my vote. I mean, he's He's a man among men here. I'm going to have a skullet, and then I'm going to wear a women's golf visor, and I'm going to lead men, and they're going to follow me. So I don't think Holgerson should be there. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through a hot seat list right now, and it says there's Ed Orgeron on it.
I don't know about Ed Orgeron. I mean, I think it's kind of hard to throw Ed Orgeron under the bus. They just won a national title.
Exactly.
But Les Miles at Kansas. No one can win at Kansas. Kansas is just terrible.
I mean, he went 0-9 in 2020, a season opening 38-23 loss to Coastal Carolina. Now, seeing how well they did, I guess that kind of aged well, but they weren't competitive in any other games until their season-ending loss 16-13 at Texas Tech.
Yeah, kind of sad. Anyway, I guess I'm on board with Holgerson, but Les Miles needs to go. Other coaches that are interesting that are on the list here. Let's see here. Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech. Stop it. He's recruiting well. He's doing all kinds of good stuff there. That guy shouldn't be on this list at all. And they've got Jeff Scott at South Florida. They didn't exactly have the best season last year.
It was
but
his
they
first year.
Yeah, he's got to have some time. So maybe this list is a little bit, just a tad bit off. So there you go. Our hot seat rankings here this afternoon on the rundown. Right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. It seems like when you look at some of these coaches, there are coaches that aren't there that should be, in my opinion. But that's set up there, though. I don't agree with Mike Leach being there where he's at, but Harbaugh should be the first to go. That should just happen. I mean, I don't even think he wants to be. I think he wants to be in the NFL. I don't know why his brother doesn't give him a job. I don't know. Brandon online says, how long before Shane Beamer is on the hot seat? They haven't even coached a game yet, Brandon.
Oh, my God.
Give him some time, brother.
There's some these people are so impatient sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that way. Not with Shane Beamer. I think Shane Beamer's going to be all right. I really do.
Really?
Just the vibe that I got from him. I'm not talking about winning the SEC East in 2 seasons, but I'm talking about being competitive. That's what I'm talking about with Shane Beamer. I think it's going to happen. More of the rundown when we come back here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Sorry about your friend there, Glenn. That sucks, man. Alcoholism is a tough thing, my brother. And I'm sorry that happened to your friend there, man. Sorry about that. TD, but that was when they had that big, huge, and like I can say this, that big, huge fat guy. The guy that was like that made me look small, and I'm a big fella. So they had him, and he was out there telling the players that they were lazy and everything else. Yeah, that's true. I don't think that's Brandon. That's not even. That's not. I think that Muschamp is quite possibly the worst coach that South Carolina has hired in my lifetime. I mean, I think he is that bad. He's terrible. Mark Mangino, that's his name. There you go. Thank you, Brandon. I think Muschamp is that bad. So if you're asking me on that, brother, that's just the way that I feel. I'm not with that at all. I don't, but Kansas is terrible. So their basketball team, they're fixing to get popped with sanctions. They're going to have a problem. They're not even going to be good at basketball anymore. So yeah, there's that.
They almost lost to UTEP yesterday.
Who, the basketball team?
Yes.
Why are they playing UTEP?
I have no idea.
It's not a Big 12 team. What the heck are they doing?
UTEP had a lead on them.
Yeah,
and
but
Kansas came back in the end.
I see everybody runs their mouth about Brad Scott. Brad Scott got them to their first bowl game. Your first bowl win. That's something. Stop everybody just wants to poop on Brad Scott. It's not really fair. He actually did something.
At Kansas?
No, Brad Scott, way before your time, sir.
Oh,
all right, here we go.
I apologize.
Well, welcome back to the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Rob Sanders. I was thinking about something today. You know, we talked about about a week ago, where the Kansas put out something. It was almost a year ago, where they talked about being the only school that has a national championship football and basketball coach. and they were talking about Les Miles winning at LSU. So I started thinking about it. Which teams are, if we start, let's do with the ACC first. When you look at the best combination of basketball and football, I think it starts with North Carolina with Coach Mac Brown and of course Coach Williams. That's got to be 1A. Would you agree there?
I would have to agree.
Yeah.
Both of them are legends in my opinion in their field.
After that, though, it's like it kind of steeps down a little bit. I still think you could talk about Clemson with Brad Brownell and Dabo Sweeney, but Dabo Sweeney's holding all the weight there because Clemson doesn't really make the tournament. I'm looking up and down the list there of all these teams. You don't really have that in the ACC, but in the SEC, you've got some good stuff there. LSU's got Ed Orgeron and Will Wade. I mean, I think that's pretty solid. Kentucky's got John Calipari, even though they're not exactly the best right now. And, of course, their Coach Stoops. That's pretty good.
Coach Stoops has really brought the Kentucky football program to a new level.
I think so, yeah. And I was looking at some of the other SEC teams. One of the up-and-coming sets might be Mizzou with Coach Drinkowitz and Coach Konzo Martin. Coach Martin has got his team playing some pretty good basketball. It's got this good 1-2 combination there on the football and basketball front. It's very hard to have a school that accelerates at both, though. TD says that with Bama basketball, with Nate Oates and Nick Saban, I can buy that. I mean, think about this. You got to pay respect to Alabama. They've won the SEC regular season title and they won the football title.
Alabama
that doesn't
fans
happen
have
a
to
lot.
be rejoicing right now. This is the year for Alabama sports fans that you just won a national title and now you're one of the best SEC teams and one of the best basketball teams in the country.
Exactly. Mr. Savage College Football joining me in studio today. Follow him on Instagram. He's at Sav. All right. Tell us you didn't make it easy for me. What is it?
You can follow me at Savage College FB.
Savage College FB.
All college football news. We'll be having 2 Q&As with college football players this coming weekend.
Oh, that sounds great, man. But getting back to what we were talking about with the coaches, Alabama is on top of the world with the SEC right now. And the Bama baseball team, they're pretty good too. They've got some guys. I mean, I know they were picked to finish near the bottom of the West over there, but they're pretty solid.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, if you have someone you'd like to mention on that list, 803-978-1832. It's kind of hard to have someone that's a great basketball coach and a great football coach and have them there at the same time. Being an all-around sports program is really tough. I remember Texas years ago when they had like Kevin Durant, and I think they had Kevin Durant, and that was the year they had like Coach Barnes was there, and they had Coach Brown. I think it was a long time ago. That's a heck of a combination there. But to have both is really tough, and something that because some schools, regardless of what happens, they're going to think, all right, we're either a football school or we're a basketball school, and one's going to get called out over the other and raised up. It's just the way that it is, but it's really hard to have both. So 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to call if you'd like to join us here on the rundown this afternoon. Tom says Saban has dogs trained in the KGB for their bag drops, not sloppy like Pruitt. No, I think that there's bag drops with everywhere. I don't think that, I'm not saying programs cheat, but it happens. Things happen. We just need to, nobody really wants to talk about it. And you'll hear a lot of, especially people that are on the radio, they don't want to put out stuff like that. They don't want to say things like, oh, well, I've said it since I started being on the air here. I think all programs cheat. I really believe that. And
if all programs are cheating, then are you really cheating at all?
I mean, that's a fair point too. But the sad part with Tennessee is that they were cheating and they were still bad. Think about that. You were cheating and you were putting money in McDonald's bags and giving it to people.
And you still
weren't that good. So there's that too. If you're going to cheat, at least cheat to a point where you can be, actually pretty good. So just saying. But, most people don't want to talk about that. I think that happens a good bit. I think that there's things that happen with money goes here and there. And I think coaches may not want to hear about it, but I think they know what's going on. We need to just start being honest with each other. Things like that happen. College sports are professional sports now. It's just the money's put where people don't see it. And until we start being honest about it and looking at the NCAA for the absolute farce that they are, it's not going to do any better. It's not going to get any better. So just be honest. I think that you should put out there what you're giving players. Why not? In the long run, that's what you're going to find out anyway. I've heard stories about players from Clemson and all over the country getting money. You heard the whole thing about the wiretaps from the one coach. Things like that happen. Just be honest. Stop with all that. Money is everywhere. Very good point, TD. Tom says there should be an NCAA MMA team. Yes, I would watch. I'm a big fan of Derek Lewis in the UFC. I'll watch all of his fights. He can fight just about anybody. I'd pay to watch that. Big guy just run around beating people's face in. Yeah, I'd watch that. I like watching Amanda Nunes too. At first I was like, I don't know if I could watch two women fight, but when you watch Amanda Nunes fight, that woman is a beast. She weighs like 140 pounds. I wouldn't step into anything with her. I'd hold the, yes, ma'am, get out of her way. She'd knock me out. Wouldn't even be close. What are you laughing at? She'd knock you out too. One-on-one, she'd probably knock just about everybody out. Amanda Nunes is an absolute beast.
I'm not denying you. I'm just saying the way that you're saying it. It's just
Dude, if I had to fight with Amanda Nunes, I would try to jump the cage. I'm dead serious. I would jump the cage to get away from Amanda Nunes. And I think she does fight tomorrow. If so, I'll be buying that fight. The UFC should be sponsoring this show. I talk about UFC stuff all the time. All these other radio hosts, they don't talk about it. They're scared to talk about fighting and everything else. I'll get into all that. I love that kind of stuff. Seriously. Don't want to talk about the UFC. It's like, the only thing we want to talk about is Gamecock football, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, and I get that, but we do more than that here. We'll talk about the Gamecocks. We'll talk about the Tigers and whatever else that catches my brain at the time. But the UFC, man, we should be thankful for the UFC. I'll tell you why. Last year during the pandemic, when we were all staring at each other in our houses, questioning our relationships and everything else, the UFC brought us through. You know why? Because they put on a fight and we had something to actually watch that was a sporting event. We weren't watching tape-delayed stuff from 8 years ago. So we need to be thankful to the UFC. One of the most American things ever is what the UFC did. And by the way, Major League Baseball, they're going to have the opportunity this summer where they can open up the stadiums a little bit more. And I think that they can bring us all back together. Who doesn't want to go to a Braves game and actually sit there and have a nice cold beer and someone could be, within 6 feet of you? Why not? TD's right about NASCAR too. I wasn't into the virtual NASCAR where, hey, we're driving a video. I wasn't into all of that. No, sir. But when they got back to the point when they were doing the whole NASCAR thing, I started watching NASCAR. Why? Because that's all that I had. So thanks to those two organizations for hopefully getting us at least through the bitter part of the pandemic. All right, Lawton Swan from Clemson Sports Talk is next. He is the czar of Clemson Sports. I appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Of course, Lawton Swan will take you home from 4 to 6. As he always does.
Stop looking at me, Swan!
By the way, don't forget, it's International Women's Business Month, Fox Sports Radio 1400, celebrating local stories that are successful. To hear interviews with key women's leaders and learn more about their businesses, go to Fox Sports Radio 1400/Midlands. All right, don't forget, on Monday, we'll have the full reaction from the weekend. Will the Gamecocks, how will they do against Kentucky? How will Clemson do against Pitt? How will the baseball series roll around? Yeah, we'll get into all of that on Monday, right here on The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. TD, you're welcome anytime, brother. It was a very boring couple of months. Oh man, you guys are awesome. You over there talking about donuts again. That's funny. You guys rock, man. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you guys later on. Sunday night, new Rob and Kale show.